I'm sure there'll be questions and comments that you might want to respond to. So, over to you. Anybody want to talk on this? Yes.
Yeah, firstly I'd like a couple of points of clarification. One of the objections I picked up along the way was regarding the building height cap of 20 storeys in North Acton, which was actually alluded to by the objector in his speech, so clarification of such a thing exists. And the other clarification is actually coming up from the briefing notes, which we received only at 6 o'clock tonight, around this density matrix of the recommended upper level being 1100. And I note from the briefing notes tonight we're talking about, although the Mayor's density matrix upper guideline expressed as habitable units per hectare is 405. So there's confusion around that. That would be helpful before I pass further comment. Thank you.
Anybody else? Councillor?
So, I just, again, clarification. The officer talked about 28% affordable and we've had 30% quoted. So I'd just like the officer to confirm what the actual figure is, please.
Yes.
Yeah, can I please have, can we have more clarification on the Section 106 money towards health? Because I've been working, many friends I've got down there, and there's many complaints about more provision.
I think you've got 3 questions there to respond to, so if you just quickly respond.
So just starting with the affordable housing, the 28% is based on unit dwellings, and the 30% is habitable rooms. So that's what's the difference, but it's the same.
Density.
So the question on density in Councillor Mullins was a question.
Yeah. So in the briefing, there's a further objection on the issue of the density matrix, and it was suggested that it was incorrectly presented in the planning committee report. So the density matrix, the upper limit. The upper limit, as set out in the density matrix, is 405 dwellings per hectare and 1,005 habitable rooms per hectare. And the proposal is 1,005 dwellings per hectare and 2,483 habitable rooms per hectare.
And Councillors are asking for more details about the Section 106 agreements, and particularly the one around health.
So we've secured a total contribution of 2.6 million. I know health, the NHS has requested a contribution of around 600,000. We're still negotiating on the split of that 2.6 million and how that will be distributed between the different requirements. So there has been a request from the NHS for 600,000, and there will be a contribution, just we haven't negotiated the exact amounts.
Councillor Mullins.
Say like regarding, because it's a major issue down there with all the developments. So in relation to the health provision for the Section 106 money, can it be restricted to creating a surgery branch, just like the prostate surgery, as there's only one surgery servicing, to my knowledge, a lot of people down there? Can you clarify that?
I'm not allowed to.
Oh, sorry. But there's one surgery from what I've been told by residents.
It will be up to the health authority. They do have to specify a project that the contribution will go to, but it would be up to them to advise us which projects they want the contribution to go towards.
Okay, Councillor Bishop.
Also, just a clarification on what Councillor Hogan asked for the 20-story limit.
Yeah, the objector said that it was capped at 20 storeys. I'm actually not sure where they're coming from, because of course we've already given planning permission 33 storeys. So could you clarify on the point? Is there a cap in that area?
It was about a cap of 20 storeys in North Acton that was mentioned in an objection, which was echoed again by the objector. So it's maybe in another part of the borough, but there's actually the objection was around specifically to North Acton.
I think the question is there a cap, and is this exceeding, well, double the cap? Yeah.
All I say on it is that the height is being endorsed by the GLA. It's not a cap specifically. As you said, there's been other
there isn't actually a cap, and there's been others approved, so, and it's been approved by the GLA. I'll say this from the chair, and I'm not being biased, but I think you can get preoccupied with 42 stories. Clearly, there's other developments at 33 stories, but this is 4 blocks making up a total, and the relevant question here is the density. Is this exceeding the Mayor's guidance? But of course it will go to the Mayor if the gives mind to pass it tonight. So, over to you, Amateur.
Chair, by all means, the report is quite detailed, and there isn't really many questions raised because we've read through it and it's pretty much answered everything. The few clarifications that we needed have been given. As far as density is concerned, again, it is a guideline. It doesn't restrict us from giving permission for it. Everything else, however, on the other hand, sort of balances it out, in my opinion, because pretty much a lot of the things, the standards, the sizes, are even better than what the GLA recommendations are. So from where I'm standing from, I'm quite minded to give a go-ahead on this one.
Councillor
Fun visit on
Sorry, no, Councillor Mullins, after Councillor Munro. Yeah. Sorry, was there somebody else?
First, wasn't he?
No, Pat. Yeah, don't worry, I mean, you'll all get to speak. Clearly, this is an important application. There's arguments both sides, we need to hear them. So,
I'd like Councillor Cogan to go.
oh, do you want to go, Councillor Cogan?
I'm waiting to go. You can go first.
It's very rare that politicians defer to each other. You should want to talk first. So, Councillor Munro, please. Don't fall out, please.
Okay. Actually, I had the site visit. I mean, I think it's the second time we've been there. I've been there once before. It is quite a large site, and we were there on Saturday and we saw the plans, and we did actually go through the issues that are being raised today. So one was the heights, and we had an explanation around, as this was going to be the centre of the buildings, the tall buildings, there would be an issue if they were any lower. If they were lower, it would just be surrounded by taller buildings all around, so you'd just be lost in a forest of smaller tower blocks. So this is supposed to be the pinnacle, and the idea was, it's like fingers of a hand. We asked the questions about density, talking about how that would work. We were said, initially there are other plans that you could have had wider buildings lower down, and that would look like a massive block of buildings, and it really wouldn't stand out. The issue was around the public realm, so 51% of the whole space is public realm. So by having a taller buildings and thinner and much nicely designed, you actually get 51% of the available land as public open space with a through route from Victoria Road.
No, it's private space. It's not public. It's
no,
private.
No, sorry, you've had your say. Please don't interfere in the meeting.
It is a public access. We confirmed that it would be open to the public to walk through and go. So you increase the permeability of the area in terms of cafes and whatever on the ground floor, restaurants, and also again 240 jobs. So they're going to relocate, take that company that's there currently there, and then bring it back when it's redone. So they would come back and actually have facilities there. So we'd have maybe have doctor surgery there. Again, I think this issue about can it be ring fenced, we give the money to the health authority, and it's their job to actually make sure there's facilities available for the residents who are going to be there in the area. They know how many units are going up, and the same with education. We give money to the education department, and it's up to them to make sure they provide the spaces that would be required in that area. It's their legal duty. It's not for us to tell them what to do, it's for them to provide that service because it's their legal duty. Now, in terms of housing, we talked about the affordable housing again, we asked the questions, and actually the decision has been left up to us in how we accept the affordable housing issue. They could actually give us normal affordable housing on that development, but with the right to buy, it may be there only for 3 or 4 years, and then somebody else buys it, and therefore that unit is gone from public use. 3 or 4 years, somebody does the right to buy, and that's it, it's gone, it becomes private. By having the discount range for 20% and 30% lower, we get that right to 20 years, and then we get a commuted sum if the development is actually generating more revenue, up to 35% affordable. So we asked that question about why would we do it this way, and it's us as a local authority that asked for this system doing it. So again, we had the choice, and as public guardians of public housing, the local authority thinks this is a better way of keeping affordable housing for a longer period of use. £2.6 million being given, as the officer said, and I've heard what the objectors had to say about some of the issues. Some of them are red herrings. It's important, height is important, and so is density. But at the end of the day, we as elected politicians have a duty to try and deliver housing that our residents say is the #1 priority. Most of them say, we need housing, we need places for people to live. That is the #1 demand. Every time we have developments come up, people, not in my backyard, people turn up and say, no, 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 and then they cry when people can't afford to buy housing or rent housing. So I think it's important we have a balanced debate, but I think looking at what we saw, but we don't have a time limit.
Well, we don't have time in the speech. You are exceeding 5 minutes.
I understand, Chair, but it is important because we've had a number of issues, and we've had people say that we don't actually talk about these issues, or we don't debate them often enough, and we don't understand what we're talking about. So it's important. We've asked the relevant questions, the officers have answered them in a report, and on that basis, understanding clearly what we're trying to do here, I think I would support it, having understood it, and not being misguided in any way. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do you want to talk, Councillor Coogan?
Yeah. Liv, anyone else? I find there's an interesting quandary here in the sense that clearly this is massively, not significantly, over the density matrix of the mayor. Yet, of course, further into the report, the GLA confirms that the development is high density, but the design, layout, massing and height are supported. So, in a sense it's a contradiction with the London plan, and then the GLA are coming along saying it is supported. What I see tonight is we're being asked to give permission to probably the highest and most intrusive block of flats in the borough, with possible consequences. We've heard some very valid points, I thought, from the local councillor about the lack of facilities that will be attached to this. So, I'm mindful not to support this application.
Anybody wants to speak? Councillor Mullins?
I'm also very inclined after the visit on Saturday. We spent well over half an hour, 45 minutes down there. 42 floors, to me, is just absolute mass overdevelopment. I went back again Sunday, stood over at the end of Horn Lane, just watching over, 42 floors, but then, as the planning officer said a while ago, well, we've let 30 go through, so you were saying 20, well, we've built 32, we built 42, next it's going to be 52. I also personally feel that there's a lack of amenity space. I mean, balconies, to me, is not amenity space. So I've already brought up also severe reservations about that area regarding health, doctor surgeries. I know it's down to professionals, but unfortunately, across the road, to me, is one of the major doctor surgery trying to service everybody, and it's impossible. So for this reason, I'll be inclined to reject.
Councillor Martin. Councillor Moore.
A couple of things. I just wondered about the travel plan. It talks about, in the document, about 4,000 person trips. Does that mean per day? If it does, it's actually said that it could potentially lead to the saturation of the local road network. And I do appreciate that they will encourage we're encouraging the developers to come up with mitigation for that. That's a heck of a lot of mitigation to find. So I would like to see something more detailed in response to that. The other half of the question is about the density. It is quite a large leap, and I just want to understand a bit more of how we've got to agreeing to such a large leap in density. I'm not saying I'm objecting to it, but I'd certainly like to feel a lot more comfortable in my own mind that it makes sense.
Councillor Wall.
Well, I think it's a good scheme personally. I think it's a very high quality design. The architecture is very good. I like the fact that it exceeds the standards, the GLA standards for internal space. I do sympathise with the residents about how tall it is. It is a very tall building, but I do think the area can support it. It's got very, very high PTAL rating right next to the stations. So I think if you want these tall buildings anywhere, and we do need the housing, this is the ideal place to put them. I think the area has been identified to have a capacity for 24,000 homes. This is going to deliver nearly 600 of them. That's a very important part of delivering the housing that we really need in the borough. So I'm minded to support it.
So there were a couple of questions from Councillor Martin. You wanted further clarification on the trips, because it's 2,000 person trips, and you believe it might be near saturation. And then you wanted some reassurance or further information on the density, because clearly that is one of the main issues here.
Just on the person trips, that's they're not all by a motor vehicle. There'll be some will be pedestrian, some will be on public transport, some will be by private motor cars, some will be on cycle. So it would be 4,000 person trips a day, but that's spread across a variety of modes of transport.
It says in the report, it says in the report that is leading to the saturation of the local roads. Now, it might not be all 4,000 going by road, but Transport Services obviously had a concern about that, and I'd like to know how we're going to make sure that doesn't materialise.
I mean, that is the purpose of the travel plan, to ensure that as many trips are by sustainable modes of transport rather than the private motor car. I mean, that's the very essence of the travel plan.
So there was a point on density, and you wanted further clarification on that?
I'll just come back, because it hasn't actually said that in the document. It hasn't said that you have come up with a travel plan that deals with that. It just encourages the developer to make sure they do. So I'm still got concern about that in the end, density.
I mean, a draft travel plan was submitted with the application. But as part of the planning conditions is that the developer will need to submit a detailed travel plan prior to the occupation of the development. So at this stage we have a framework travel plan, and that needs to be developed as they learn more about the development and what it's used as, and the occupiers of the commercial units are.
Okay, anybody else wants to come in who's not spoken yet? Okay, Councillor
It would
Martin.
have been good if you'd made it clear that the officers are confident that that travel plan is going to adequately mitigate against that. And I feel the report just leaves it hanging in the air. So that's the point I was trying to make. And I'm still asking about the density and how we got to the density that we have.
Yeah, I think the density really is the major issue here. And on the one side, we've heard from Councillor Crawford, and we've heard from the residents, we've heard from Rupert Hunt, the local MP. I think clearly it's above the guidance, and it potentially could lead to strain on local services in the area. On the other side of the argument, the officers are very clear in the report. They're saying that there are the mitigating circumstances here. We've heard from Councillor Munro, who made the point about the skyline and the fact that you've got the different levels of building. So it's an aesthetic thing. I understand what they're saying there. And they're talking about the design, the transport, amenity. It's right by a station. They're talking about the fact that there's 164 affordable homes. So balancing the argument, they're saying that's mitigating against what the residents are doing. But clearly, there's the issue here about the density, and that's a decision I think the committee have to weigh up the two sides of the argument. So, is there anybody else that wants to speak that hasn't spoken on this? Yes.
I just wanted to ask whether there's been any sort of sustainability and environmental offsetting going on within obviously the plan, but in the building. Is there anything built into that to sort of offset that? Because in the report it's just sort of saying, yeah, we're happy with that, and with section 106 it's just talking about trees. Is there anything about the actual building material that's sustainable?
The scheme is being developed to be highly sustainable. Do you mean the actual materials and how they're sourced? I mean, there is, as part of the planning conditions, there's an energy strategy that's required, so they need to make the full details of what that would be. But in terms of sourcing of materials, is that the question?
No, how green is it? It's a green standard.
I think you need to say something maybe about the green standards.
How green is a
building
42-storey
control,
concrete
etc.
skyscraper?
Energy systems, energy and all the rest.
I mean, in respect of energy saving, the proposal is compliant with the GLA standards in terms of sustainability and the CO2 savings, emission savings. So the GLA confirmed that they are happy with that, and our energy officer has also confirmed that the proposals meet with those standards.
Okay, I think we've had a good debate on that. There's two sides of an argument here. This council has spoken for and against. Councillor Manor, I assume that you're moving approval,
Yes.
and this is subject to the 106 agreement and referral, of course, to the mayor, that's the report outlines. So, can I see all those in favour of approval?
Interesting.
And can I see all those against? So I'll make that 8-3, is that right? Okay, so it's approved, subject to the 106 agreement and referral to the mayor.